Hey, look, it's showtime. We're bringing it on TrueHoop. It's Fridays with Jarod, which means thankfully we have Jarod. How you doing, dude?
I'm good, sir. How are you?
Good, good. Turns out David's here. Turns out we all have the same evening plans, which is takeout in Hamilton.
Happy Hamilton Day.
Happy Hamilton Day.
There you go. Judy's got the clock. My heart rate literally goes up when the clock. All right. Traditionally,
all right.
Kick us off whenever you're ready.
I'm kicking it off. So Royce White, former NBA player, wrote an open letter to Kyrie Irving talking about a call for Operation Black Bank. And basically what he talks about there is this idea of the players getting together and starting banks in each of the cities where there's an NBA franchise, right? But a Black-owned bank, right? Because it talks about all of the issues Black people face in this country as it relates to the wealth gap and their ability to get access to funds and the myriad of things that we talk about on this show and that exists everywhere out there in the universe for you to find and read. And what I find so interesting about this is the connection to everything that's going on right now. I was talking about it here. Let's bring it up. The capitalist machine, my favorite thing, right? Racism, it is. Racism and capitalism are intertwined, right? And as Dr. Kendi writes in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, they're conjoined twins, he calls them, right? Of the same body, but different faces and different personalities. The origins of racism can't be separated from the origins of capitalism and vice versa. And this idea is something that my dad used to talk to me about a long time ago when I was like 8 years old. And my dad's kind of a wacky conspiracy theorist. But like now as an older person, I'm like, you know, Dad, you might have been right about that point, right? Maybe all the wealthy Black people should get together and start banks in these areas and give Black people access to capital, because if you're going to be an anti-racist and fight racism, that means you are also an anti-capitalist, right? And systems that hurt Black people are your enemy too. So I think it's a great idea.
I like it.
David gets the blue clock.
Okay, so sorry. Go ahead, Judy.
It's going.
Oh, I don't hear it.
It's going right now. TikTok. Oh, the video you mean. I get you.
Yeah.
With this number of 6 feet. I think they just pulled it out of their rear ends.
Yeah, so that was the scene, I think, late April in Michigan. Basically, a bunch of dumbass people, many of them holding enormous weapons that is a whole nother 90 by 90 story. And our country is facing we're on the precipice of going from pandemic to endemic, which means apparently really, really bad things. I'm not a scientist, but we are at a point very closely now where if we don't get under control this virus, we're dealing with this for a long time, months, years, who knows what the damage will be. And too many Americans are listening to dumb motherfuckers like that. I'm sorry, there's no other way to say it. People have no idea what they're talking about, and they're flagrantly exhibiting how ignorant they are. And so all of us, it's incumbent upon us, if we want to get back to some kind of life again and have kids go to schools, I see it, Judy, we need to make sure that we don't listen to those people and tell them to stop and let the adults talk, please.
Okay.
Judy was flashing her scorecard.
Okay, here we go. So as I'm sure you know, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's Confederate, I guess, was arrested yesterday. And there's a lot of stuff in the TrueHoop archives about that. Oh no.
I see it.
Weird thing that happens when the screen share happens where my screen goes away and I can't.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, here we go. So without going into all that, I just want to read this one little thing from an old Ben Whitcomb Town and Country story. She was a big part of the jet set, said one person who has known her for 15 years. I would see her in St. Bart's on Paul Allen's yacht, the Octopus, an infamous 414-foot floating pleasure palace, then owned by the late Microsoft co-founder, also then owner of the Trailblazers, and at Heidi Klum's Halloween party in New York. Their friend described Ghislaine, now 57, as a chic brunette who was friendly, chatty, and part of a fashionable clique. Much like Epstein, her social circle also encompassed Britain's Prince Andrew, a Palm Beach set which included Donald Trump and the Clinton family. She even attended Chelsea Clinton's 2010 wedding. But the thing is, this is a quote, to hang around those billionaire guys, you either have to be sleeping with them or you're finding them girls. There is no in-between when you're in that crowd, said the friend, referring not to Ghislaine individually, but the dark habits and rituals common at the highest echelons of power. The other thing you can do is get them into parties. It's the private jet equivalent of grass, gas, or ass, the source added, riffing on the 70s maxim of how hitchhikers could compensate drivers for their ride. Just terrifying. I yield my time.
Wow. Wow.
Henry's favorite thing, billionaires and the seedy world around them.
I hate that stuff, but I talk about it.
So in the Athletic, Michael Lee spoke to executive director of the NBPA, Michelle Roberts, and one of the things that came up in that conversation was a police accountability project that she is working on with the players. And I thought this was really interesting, and I actually reached out to her to see if she can come on the show. So hopefully, stay tuned to talk about it. I find this so interesting and fascinating because I think these are the things that we need to do. So on the one hand, we must stay vigilant out in the street, protesting because protesting is what gets people's emotions up and it gets people to act and do things. But we must simultaneously do things to change policy and vote and move people out of office. That is the harder, painstaking work, but that's the work that has to be done for the protest to work, right? So it's married. It's these two things that must work in tandem and travel together. And the idea of researching areas of the country where there is heavy police violence against people of color and figuring out, okay, how do we link that? Here are the stats, here are the raw numbers. Here's how we determine what prosecutors we vote in and vote out. Here's what we present to the mayors, et cetera. And these are the things that we as a society and as a collective, we want to do. We talk about defunding the police, allocating resources. All of this is incumbent. And again, as a society, if this is what we want, the true change, we have to do both. So kudos to the NBPA.
The Undefeated had a great feature, I think it was yesterday, about Phoenix Suns coach Monty Williams. And one of the things we've heard a lot on our show is Jarod and Henry, but especially Jarod, being focused on, are we going to lose sight of these big picture issues when games start? It's almost as if life is back to normal. And Coach Williams, who is an honorable and intelligent a man, and he's the kind of guy you want to coach your kid. Well, I can speak. I'd love him to coach my son. He gets it. Like, he knows what Jarod's been talking about is absolutely on his agenda. That he's hoping to have time to fish. He wants to develop Devin Booker, and he's talking about basketball stuff. But he also knows there's an opportunity here. They've been talking. He mentions Lloyd Pierce in the article, that the guy we just had on the other day, about the voting rights, but there's more issues. The coaches are talking about it. I do think there might be, I don't know what media is allowed in. I know that if we were allowed in, Henry would have an incredible time, and Jarod as well, as real journalists, talking to these guys about these issues. They're going to have so much time. They have no family to hang out with. There's only so much preparation you can do until at least you get to the playoffs. I think we have a chance to get some incredible stories out of there from the mouths of those that are living. And by the way, he's not a young kid. He's been around. He's got some amazing stories about his old days when he was a player.
Dun, 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 dun. So I want to talk about Sanjay Gupta, CNN doctor, talked to the Athletics' David Aldridge. And here I'm going to do a little computer thing. Pardon me. Okay. So he has an interesting point. He said a lot of the things that a lot of doctors and experts have said on this show. But he had this one other point, which is, my parents live in Florida. They've worked in different industries, and I have lots of people who work in the hotel industry in my friend's circle, and I think about them. How do you explain this to them? And then, if God forbid, one of them were to get sick or even die, how would I explain that to their kids? So in order for basketball players to play basketball, this person got infected and ended up getting sick or dying. I think that's where it becomes really real. And I don't mean to paint it too gloomy, but you asked the question, where do I come down on this? When I work through all the various metrics in my head and sort out the various calculus, here's how this could play out, here's how that could play out. I think there's ways to keep basketball players pretty safe, much safer than the rest of the community, even in a state like Florida where the virus is spreading. But you have all these other people who might be potential sources of infection to the bubble, and they themselves could get sick. Hard to argue.
Agreed.
Amazing.
Thank you, Judy. So the Undefeated, getting a lot of pub on here today. There was an article written by Michael Fletcher, America's facing a reckoning over race, but we've seen this before. Our history shows African Americans make gains, but we are stopped short of full equality. And it's something tied into what Coach just mentioned about, you know, my beating of the drum of, if we return back to some kind of normalcy, that nothing transpires and moves forward. We have a history of this happening in this country, post-Reconstruction era, which is after the Civil War, right? Remember, 40 acres and a mule, all these things that were supposed to happen, they did not happen. And for the small people it did happen for, that stuff was taken away from them. Post World War I and World War II, GI Bills. Go get your education. Go get moving to the neighborhoods. Actually, no, you can't. Right? Jim Crow, civil rights. It's like we get to these points where these steps seem to be made, and they're not. Right? The election of Barack Obama, the first Black president in the history of America, to 2 terms, and now look where we are. Right? Like we seem to make these steps forward, but we don't go anywhere. Right? Because it stops short of full equality. And until we get to the point where we literally recognize everyone and see the humanity in everyone, it is my fear and most Black people's fear that, this is all good and well for a little time and it's going to look nice, but I'm going to be right back where we always been.
Yeah, it's a fair fear. So today is Hamilton Day, as we talked about. Disney, I think, has already started showing it. Friends of mine have been texting me. My wife and I are watching it tonight, and we're looking forward to a really special time. Then I'm gonna watch it again with my daughter and her best friend, I think tomorrow night. And they know every word to every song to the point where they can perform. This is a show for sure. And that's why we're watching it alone tonight without them, so we can hear the real people singing it first. I saw it in person. I saw Henry the night before, actually. Cried my eyes out and felt like I was in Vienna watching Mozart for the first time. It was, and I've been to a lot of Broadway shows and listened to a lot of music. It was stunning. Anyone listening to this, I'm sure, has probably heard it, or at least heard of it to some degree. It's well worth it, and it's a reminder of the hidden talent that exists. I've talked before about stories like the Green Mile, where you have this healing God almost who was imprisoned. Very symbolic, I think, of much of America and the world's problems over the years. Lin-Manuel Miranda is Puerto Rican. The performers represent everything you see in America. And it's the most genius thing I've ever personally witnessed in my life, absent some of the incredible paintings I've seen in museums. It is well worth your time to watch and read the book about it and understand that talent like Lin-Manuel and those performers are everywhere. We just have to open up our eyes and look for it.
I want to know about David's painting appreciation. That's another topic for another day. So there's been a little bit of talk. Our friend Jackie McMullen published a story about what's being called the Delete 8 or the losers bubble. And it's funny, I would love to criticize the NBA for basically everything they do, but on this one, I feel bad for them. I really do. So this is not a naked money grab, right? This is not an effort to endanger people to make profit. This is really, my take is that there are a lot of people, including Lloyd Pierce, who we had on this show Monday, who, or Wednesday, I don't know what day anything is. Today's Friday, that's helpful. But whenever Lloyd was here, they want to play. So to me, this one is merely consensus building in the league, right? They're trying to appease different constituencies, and a lot of people wanted this. And now that the NBA is like, okay, we're going to try to make it happen, I imagine this one would be tremendous money loser, and everyone's just killing them for it.
I'd rather pick up at LA Fitness.
Right? To me, the big distinguishing reason why they should not do it is because now America's back in this testing shortage. Michelle Roberts has wisely said that they shouldn't have different health rules for the different bubbles. So basically, we're only going to do it if everybody gets a test every day. It's hundreds of thousands of tests to pull this off, right? It's getting tougher to justify. But the fact that everyone's killing them for it, to me, I'm like, sorry guys. I know you're trying to do the right thing here. It's just nobody likes the sound of this one, right?
No-win situation.
Yeah. No, I love it. The loser bubble.
There is the testing issue. Living in Florida is crazy. My son, to get a test before he goes to school, is supposed to get up at 5 a.m. and be in a 2-hour line, and then who knows still how long that line must be because he's not symptomatic or anything. And so his doctor won't order one. It's an issue.
He's in a line in a car.
Yeah, there's a place that has testing right by where we live, and I drove by the line the other day at maybe 8:30 in the morning, and it looked like a drive-through at Chick-fil-A. It's just there's 50 cars waiting, and this was hours after it had been open. And normally within 2 hours they run out of tests anyway. That's why you have to get up at 5 a.m. to be guaranteed to get one. So it's a problem. Just like we talked about when it first came out, the NBA did, taking tests away from people who really need it. They didn't foresee this coming, and because no one wearing a mask and no one distancing the way they should, we're back where we were, and worse. We're worse than where we were.
It is like it's a medical ethics question that I don't pretend to have answers to, but I mean,
Yeah.
like the NBA may have purchased these tests when they were abundant, and they may have them now.
Right.
And you may find experts who will say they didn't take them from people, but it's
Right.
just not. It just can't be. This is basically hoarding, right? Like,
Well, you know,
Right.
tests shouldn't cost money, right? They should be free, right? Like, I mean, that's the first thing, right? You shouldn't be able to get a test only if you can pay for it. Tests should just exist. But that's more of my capitalist machine rant.
But did you wait, Jarod, did you see when you were talking about starting banks, Devin's like capitalist Jarod?
Listen,
Was there a video, Jarod?
What is it, Jarod? Do you want banks or not banks? You know?
listen, I want it all. No, it's funny because I like most people, you go through an evolution in life, right? Like very early on, like I worked in finance when I was in my early 20s. So I was very much pro-capitalist and like, no, you just do this. And then it's like, all right, let me just keep paying attention to this system and realizing, well, that's not exactly how this works, right? And then you dig and you read about billionaires and you think, okay, well, that's not really how that works either, right? And you start learning and then you realize like, all right, this is all just a shell game and it's just live tonight. You're on the capitalist machine. Yes, we will be performing all of our hits.
Well, I did not study this. I studied journalism in college, but like I gather from like other people talking about their econ classes, right?
Right.
Basically, naked capitalism lets the strong devour the weak. Right?
Yes,
The ideas of like some rules, like the referee of the game, right? The idea is to like make it so that doesn't continually happen. Like to me, it seems inarguable that now the problem is that people, the strong, are not just benefiting from the system, but running it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I don't like in that scenario. Do you want to run it? Do you want to own the bank? Maybe.
And ultimately, that's the thing, though, right? Like you cannot have the ruling class as they are currently structured without the poor and the like that's how it works. You cannot have one without the other. It's how the system props itself up. And again, I encourage people to read. There's so many books out there about this, but Ibram does a really good job in How to Be an Anti-Racist, talking about how this is all played out. And since we're talking about all sorts of interesting things like, slavery and capitalism, there is a video that I do want to play right now, Judy. It's from Moments for Black Lives, and it's a take on Frederick Douglass's question as we celebrate Independence Day tomorrow. What does July 4th mean to the slave? And it's done by
What
W.D.
to my people is the 4th of July? My people who are failed every day by every country, sleepless in the long night, terrorized by fireworks, we who have cried salt baths for our kin. Look at all we have borne for you: arms, armistice, the sweetest fruits, flesh of children hidden away from the ugly summer of their own blood. We are on the front lines. Help me, tell me, what do we tell the children of your 4th of July? What is death to a daughter? What is river to a sea? Where is the country where my people are safe? Ancestors, set the table, send dream mares in high supply. Too heavy, too spent, too hot to cook. No promise beyond the sparkly, simple bombs. Keep your holiday, your hunger, the blood in your teeth. Police parade down streets, proud descendants of the slave patrol, a theater of denial, a propaganda pageant, and we are on the front lines. All summer my uncle can't sleep and he was born free, and he ain't never been. We deserve a break. We deserve to laugh, talk shit, and scream. Every day I'm waiting for rain. Some indication that this land I'm set to die on will grow good enough to deserve me. Where is it, this country that deserves us? What do we name it? What is its 4th of July? How do I tell my children there is blue sky up there? Life threw a brick through my window of opportunity. How dare I tell my children there is free? This day should be quiet. Every head lowered into the pages of history. It was illegal for us to read, and then we read the laws. The laws were illegal. Turned horses into squad cars, hounds into warrants. What to us is your 4th of July? Halos and kinks of fire, a middle finger, an ugly foil, a rain, a joke, where we are the punchline. A lie. Until you make it otherwise.
I Thanks, Judy. I mean,
Crap.
yeah, I mean, I don't not much for me to say there. I mean, David and those images, the images and his words say it all, right? I mean, this is the history of this country, literally witnessed in those 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Did he
I say
write
it all
that?
the time.
Did he write that?
No, it was written by, I think the credits were done at the end.
Okay.
I forgot who wrote it, but he performed. He just narrated it.
Yeah.
This is what has been going on since the beginning, right? And it's been continuous and just evolves into different forms. And you've seen the major players that have been the people the people that have sort of stood their ground at the time, and the people who recognized what's going on and tried to change things, right? Think about the Black Panther Party, a group that, right, who most people, when you learn about it, they were this militant group who were just about like guns and anti-government. If you do your homework, not what they were started for, right? They were started for getting a free breakfast for kids in Oakland, right? Because parents had to go to work and the kids had to go these and community events and getting people to vote. And then they started reading the laws and realizing, well, wait a minute, we're allowed to carry guns. Well, we got to do that because cops are killing us. And all of a sudden, when they started carrying guns, oh no, you can't carry guns, and the law changes, right? And this goes back to what I said in my third piece before, the idea that it seems like we make progress, and every time it's like Sally or Lucy moving the football for Charlie Brown. Boop, no kicking the football for you, or you're moving the goalpost. It just keeps getting pushed further and further down, and no true equity is resolved. So yeah, July 4th, I mean, whatever. It's a day, just a day.
Go ahead, Henry.
I just want to shout out the poetry here a little bit. I took notes as he was talking. This land I'm said to die on will grow good enough to deserve me. Holy crap. And the laws were illegal. Like, what a great line.
Yeah.
And that reminded me a little bit of, I wrote about it. Everybody talked about it. The, my skin is the color of rape.
Mm-hmm.
Like if 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 100 years from now, we see this as a pivotal summer when America healed itself and we have a happy ending to this, may that be so. Poetry saved us, right? Like, these are poets explaining things that in ways that are delightful and blow my mind. Like, yeah, super courageous.
Springsteen wrote in Jungle Land, and the poets down here don't write nothing at all. They just stand back and let it all be. It never really hit me until watching that right there. And then what you just said, Henry, the power and the juice of that statement. I'm always looking for litmus tests to help racists understand why I think they are what they are. There will be people, if I post this on Facebook later, which I'm going to do, there'll be people I know who will say, what is that guy talking about? He's a famous actor, performer. And I know what to tell them other than to say, you can't get past your own racism. If that's your reaction to that moving piece of art.
You can't tell him he secretly feels safe and is just performing this way.
Right.
For what reason? Right.
Right. And that's the thing about this, right? It is, and again, I'd love to get this guy. I don't know how we do it because he's got a lot going on, but I encourage everyone, if you have not read How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Ibram Kendi, please read that book, because he talks about, right, racism and racist as not this fixed point, right? It is a descriptive term. Everyone, myself included, can be racist and also anti-racist within the same 5 minutes, right? Like, that's just who we are as people, and that's how complicated we are, how we think about things, right? And it's incredible that is often a response, Coach, that people will say, well, what does LeBron know about that? He's rich. Or what? So you think because he's got money or whatever, that delineates the fact that, he also happens to be black, right? The money makes, that's fine. Those other things don't matter. It's like, no, you still experience those things. That's why they speak out and say, I could have been Trayvon, right? Like, and let's be real, right? Like, a 13-year-old LeBron, let's say he was coming home from AAU and wasn't walking and wasn't, getting driven home or whatever, and was in somewhere in Cleveland walking with two of his friends. At 13, he was a big dude, right? What could have happened to him then, right? And that's the thing. And so it's this idea that the way in which we view each other, it's embedded and baked into the fiber of the very being of this country. And David just put a question in here. how is society faring in terms of detecting more subtle racism compared to overt racism? I mean, I think poorly, right? Like the overt racism is the easy thing to call out. Like that's obvious.
That's right.
The subtle racism is so hard to see because people don't think that it is, right? That's the problem with the subtle racism is that, oh, it's just like this because that's just how we always do things. No. That's not what it is, right? Like the reason why you don't see more people of color in your neighborhood is because of racist policy, not because black people want to live in poor neighborhoods. That ain't it, my friends. Like it's things like that, and it's the reason why WNYCW, their employees wrote a note and they said they wanted more diverse hiring and they wanted more leaders of color. They hired a white woman, and they were just like, this is not it, right? And in the piece in the Times it talked about it. It's words like, why did you hire this person over this person? Oh, I don't know. They have a nose for news. There's some intangible quality that I can't really explain. Okay, fine. That's fine. But why is it that those kind of descriptor terms are only reserved for certain types of people? I could have a nose for news. I could have a quality that you can't explain, but it's never used to describe people that look like me. So yeah, so when we talk about subtle racism, that happens day after day after day. And that is almost not impossible, but it's really, really difficult to root out.
That's what I honestly like, before we started broadcasting, we were talking about Hamilton being a product of New York City. And I feel like New York now today is not nearly as diverse as 1991 when I moved to New York. And every kind of person does every kind of thing in New York. Like it was just this crazy mixed up carnival of like there's no stereotype that would hold a block. Like the next block would challenge any stereotype you had. And I feel like as this 17-year-old kid from the whitest state in the union in Oregon, like I just had to confront the fact that like I had a bunch of stereotypes in my head and like they were all just horse crap, right? Like, and I kind of love that. Just like, this is where I sometimes feel like, what a blessing for me to just like everybody has permission to be anything, right? Like anybody can have a nose for news, for crying out loud, like right. Whatever, and every other stereotype there is out there, right? And I just sometimes feel like, I get really defensive when people say that like Europe has somehow figured out race issues better than the U.S. I'm like, Europe will never make Hamilton. Like nope. Europe is not very integrated, right? Like I know we're integrated now 20 years ago, but like in my childhood, which involved a lot of trips to Europe because my family was English, like it's the whitest thing you've ever seen. Right?
Yes. Well, we see it in sports. We see what they've done to professional athletes. These are things that would never even be able to happen here. As bad as we can be, we've never had any of the things that have happened over there.
New York is to be the most meaningfully integrated city I've ever seen. I'm sure that people would argue that, but like, it's, not that it's a triumph, and it's less integrated now than before. But like the fact is, like, there are people in high positions who look every different kind of way, all in New York. And if you're looking for places like neighborhoods that are like meaningfully diverse, you're going to find more of them in the 5 boroughs than you will in most anywhere else.
And it's interesting that you bring that up about New York, right? Because as someone who's born here, lived in Brooklyn, about 1978, right? And then moved out to New Jersey, came back, but I've always been like lived out in Silicon Valley for a bit. I've always been centered around here. It's changed over time, right? Like, and to beat my horse again, capitalism, right? When the money starts increasing, all of a sudden it just filters out, right? And it's really just oligarchs now who live in like Manhattan proper, right? Because it's only people who can afford to, because it's just too expensive. But and that's how you can do things to say, well, this is not racist. When you set a price that just, okay, you can't afford it, right? I don't have to say it's race, but the money will dictate what it actually is. And it's crazy because you can even look at neighborhoods like the East Village and Lower East Side. And I mean, Brooklyn, obviously, I mean, it's just the demographics have just shifted and shifted and shifted as the more money has increased. And actually, Joe Tsai's wife, Clara, who's the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, she's very big on economic empowerment and equality. And it's really interesting because, and I was doing some Christmas thing with her and I didn't get a chance to really like dig in and ask her what I wanted to ask her because there's so many contradictions there, right? I mean, well, your husband runs this like major corporation in China with like a communist government, but that setting wasn't the right time to ask her those kinds of questions.
Maybe not.
You know, but it just, but again, and that's not to like knock her. It's just that how we are as people is so much inherent conflict and issues, right? Like within us, much less trying to fix this thing we call the world. It's a challenge. The chat's going nuts with guys talking about racism in sports and coded language. And Coach, you know this. I mean, coded language, I mean, and it's the easy ones that we know, right? The white players, you know, first guy in, last one to leave. He's so heady, like a coach out on the floor, like all those ridiculous, like prop crutch sayings that like commentators use all the time. And the black player's like, oh, what a natural athlete. He can jump out of the building, right? And it's always about the body, right, for the black athlete versus the mind for the white athlete. And it's like, you don't think LeBron's a freaking basketball genius? Like, what's the matter with you? Like,
anyone who talks like that now on TV, they're just showing their ignorance. I'm not going to let them define what many of us think, but there's certainly the pervasive attitude by many of them are just that. Chauncey Billups, I've said this many times, like he had a computer in his brain. I don't know how he got the computer in his brain. He didn't used to have a computer in his brain. I saw him play when he was in high school as a freshman at a big AU tournament in DC. I had no idea what I was looking at. Someone told me, hey, make sure you check out the kid from Denver, Billups. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I walk onto a court, I see this incredible athlete.
It's like Colorado bias, by the way. That's what that was right there. That's confident basketball.
Right. He was just this athlete when he was 14. And then he went to Colorado. I never paid attention. And all of a sudden, I'm watching him play as a veteran for the Pistons. And I'm realizing he's doing like high-level Windows, back then probably Windows 3 calculations, running pick and rolls. Like, I'm sure he could have been a brilliant hedge fund manager. Sure of that. Or maybe an epidemiologist. The way he was able to compute, and it's something we work with all the time, is that pattern recognition and then immediate recognition afterwards. It's very hard to do. LeBron, of course, we know LeBron is just as much an artist as a scientist. I think he has a visualization ability that it's probably why he's making films. There's an imagination in LeBron that I thought Chauncey was more pure science, which is nothing wrong with that either, of course. But yeah, it's just stupid. And Larry Bird, his game, I've had black players tell me he was as black as, in terms of playing, as black as you can get. That dude was born on the playgrounds to ball. His color of skin was meaningless. So he couldn't jump 40 inches. I know a bunch of white dudes that can. Like, that doesn't matter. His game was so natural. I don't listen to idiots to talk about it. They're just, hopefully we'll get less of them. But the Kings guy just got fired for bitching about DeMarcus Cousins.
mm-hmm.
All white lives matter. I mean, are you still not getting it? So Grant got fired. Yeah, he's canned.
Devin's just linking to the Hamid Haddadi conversation that the Clippers broadcasters got in trouble for.
What did he say? I don't know. I don't know.
So this is a long time ago now, but
yeah.
When he checks in, they just were in disbelief for a while. Like, he's from the real Iran? Like, you sure it isn't Borat's older brother? Like,
oh, Jesus.
Like, what the, like,
jeez.
Wow. I'll tell you this, though. Like, I've sort of tried to write about this, but it's hard. But, like, occasionally there's a player that's kind of like a mascot, like a beloved bench player.
Mm-hmm.
People almost think isn't good at basketball, but they love, right? This is the player that they will chant for the coach to sub in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's some kind of affectionate bond between the fan and some players. It's not always, but it's almost always a white player.
Alex Caruso, Los Angeles Lakers.
Alex Caruso.
He's really good, though.
Scalabrine, like, the whole time.
Scal, yep.
He isn't so good.
But the point, but there's something about Alex Caruso and Brian Scalabrine, I would suggest, that, like, the fans think that they're vulnerable, like, that they're hanging on by a thread, that it's amazing that they can perform at this level, right? Like, I think that the typical NBA fan sees Alex Caruso or Brian Scalabrine as sort of like their child, who's lucky to have made the team, and we should root for them because they're good people working hard, right? Whereas, like, a black player tend to be seen as like, well, yeah, of course he'd be here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's an invulnerability to it, and that is, I mean, I can already hear the response like, that's not racist, but it's like, well,
it actually is. Actually, it is. No, and you're 100% right, Henry. Like, that is what happens, and it 100% is racist. Facts. If I see, oh, you're black, you must be better at basketball. It's like, why would you assume that? Based on what? Like, you haven't seen me play basketball.
Right.
Like, how do you know that?
Ask any coach that. We know.
And there's a delightful bias that like people have, which I'm fine with, which is like if you've watched any player from 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, like you root for that player. Like that's just how humanity is, right? Like I'm very excited about like, you know, soccer players who go to high school with my kids, right?
Yeah.
Just because I've seen them. Like you see the struggle, you see the years, you see the injuries and the recoveries and all this stuff. That's a bias. It's fine. But the fact is, like, if you've been watching white players go through that struggle, like, you know, like everybody, I mean, I'm telling you, every single time as a journalist, and you both know this, like if you get one-on-one with like someone who's been close to an NBA player from age 10, like they're going to tell you that this player has been discriminated against their whole career. Everybody feels that way, right? It's a brutal competitive system where most people just don't get the breaks. Most people don't get the playing time. Most people don't get the ball. Most people don't get all the things they want. They don't get the ads, the whatever.
Right.
Everybody feels that way, which is fine. But what's screwed up is like sometimes you can see it happening on these race lines, right? Where it's like, you know, there are some people who make it to the NBA and like 7 white people know about them. And it's like, we can still love those. We can still feel all the vulnerability of Alex Caruso in, you know, Hamid Haddad, right? Like, you just can open your heart and notice it earlier, right? Anyway, there you go. I'd stop.
Well, it's interesting. I wanted to tie that point about the Iranian player to something. I don't know if you saw Prim's tweets recently.
Yeah.
Prim Shrifabat, who of course, you know, friend of the show, and how producers in TV have told her, I don't know, that name's a little too ethnic sounding, right? And you guys know this, right? There is a thing when the mainstream hears a name that is not Smith or Jones that causes this weird thing to happen in their brain. It's almost like a repulsion or like a what? And like the face starts getting scrunchy and like, and all these like things come out, which are racist, by the way. Newsflash, like when you're doing that, that is racist. And it's incredible. Like, and it's so just baked into, and again, most people don't think there's anything wrong with it. They're like, I'm not being racist. It's like, no, but you actually are. Judy, you're so fast with the tweets.
I know, she doesn't mess around. She does not mess around.
But yeah, it's, whew.
I'm glad though. Here's the thing though. There were, you know, her name is Prim Shrifabat. And she's in broadcasting. And there's a lot more of that now, right? I used to work with this guy. This is so funny. Like when, for a while, we lived in Wisconsin and I worked on the radio. And the weather guy I worked with, his name was Nick Olberding, which is not really like, to your point, it's not like a conventional broadcast friendly name, right? And we were not particularly close, but we had a couple dinners. And at one of the dinners, the theme was basically, Nick Olberding was never going to change his name. That was like, it wasn't the coolest name, but he just, in this industry, people wanted to change the name and wasn't going to do it. That was like his big thing. I'm not kidding you. Like a month after that dinner, he got an offer. I think he's still on the air. He got an offer to go to like the Bay Area TV market because it is particularly big. Is I think the 4th most populous in the nation, to go be a TV weatherman there. And within a week of taking the job, he was Nick O'Kelly. And he's still Nick O'Kelly.
Do you think there was a movement to try to get Giannis to change his last name?
He did change his last name.
Oh, because it's super long?
No, that's a Greek version of his name. Like,
is that right?
He had a Nigerian name that they Greeked up.
Henry is hitting the nail on the head.
I didn't know that.
Here,
Yeah.
right?
Was it longer than Antetokounmpo?
It's similar to his.
I thought it was longer even, yeah.
But it wasn't about making it shorter. It was about making it.
No, I know that. I think I've seen the name before.
Yeah.
Think about the way that
you read about
Giannis. Talk about Giannis, right? Not but like the regular mainstream media does, right? Everything is about Greece and him coming here from Greece. He's Nigerian.
I say that all the time.
Dude.
He is not
black.
Greek.
Like he is not Greek. Yes, he is a Greek national because he was born there, but like
he was digging for food in trash cans in Greece. Don't tell me he's Greek.
Like this is, you know, it's woo boy. Bilal reminds me when Masai called him Nigerian and people freak. Yeah. Because Greek freak is just better than oh, Nigeria, oh, Africa. I don't think we don't want to touch on that. It's but to your point, Henry, your name, that is the most that's who you fucking are. That's what you're right. Like, and so for someone to take away your name, like, that isn't gonna work for everybody. We got to give, like, what is that telling you psychologically, right? Like, it's wow.
Well, it is actually, this is where the conventional view of America and the 4th of July, and the flag, right? This is where, like, just making it hue to convention is a giant problem, right? Like conventional thinking. Norman Rockwell, this is the problem, right? We're believing in this crazy myth.
I'm the first generation. I'm the very first person to have Thorpe in my family as our last name, because my papa had to change it because of how anti-Semitic Miami Beach was, and he was a dentist there. I think I've talked to this before. And he had to change his name after he got back from World War II as a dentist there to Thorpe from TrueHoop, or he wouldn't have been in any business any longer, and who knows what he would have done, or he would have had to move, which he didn't want to do. It's crazy how people may not have gone to see a doctor or a dentist because of the last name was TrueHoop.
This is America.
No question.
And it's a deal, right? Like, you can, like, it's a decision. Like, I don't pretend to, someone, like, a lot of people change their name, right? Like Giannis, right? You're making a deal, right? And, or if, like, maybe Nick O'Kelly really needed that job and that was a condition of the job, and, like, I sort of feel like, I get it, but the effect on the public is undeniable, right?
Right.
Telling people that successful people sound like Thorpe and not TrueHoop, like, or Trump, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a change of name.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that. Was it Jackass?
Great grandfather was
Red Jackass.
His great grandfather was Drumpf. D-R-U-M-P-F.
Yes, right. Yeah. That's right.
And I mean, it's like a deal, right? He made a deal.
Yeah. I'm not going to talk about him anymore on Hamilton Day. Let's talk about Makur Maker.
Yes. Go ahead, Coach.
Yeah, I don't follow athletes until pretty much they get to the NBA, or at least their prospects. But apparently he's one of the top players in the country, and he passed up UCLA to go to Howard. And it's going to be a thing. Like, this is one of the things coming from the BLM movement right now, is more attention to a topic that some people have been talking about for a few years. As I coach high school players, and we like our players to consider those schools the historically Black colleges and universities, no matter what level they are, depending on the experience that we feel like they need. And we're just one small part of their guidance group. But this is going to happen more and more. And as foul as the NCAA is, and as corrupt and exploitative as they are, we need to pour money into these schools for facilities to get these, because they'll get more guys to come. That's one thing that I can tell you right now. UCLA, I don't know people at UCLA very well, but I'm certain that when they knew Howard was in the running, they said, well, listen, it's a great school, and you'll be surrounded by a lot of people you want to be around with, whatever, but their strength coach makes $40,000 a year, and they're using Nautilus equipment from 1978. I know those comments were happening. So let's just address it. Let's pour the new, LeBron and all these, whoever we can do, sneaker companies, pour money into these places. And then here's what will end up happening. And this is something that is important to me. Getting young people of all ethnicities way better opportunities to play for amazing people, men and women. I would love for women to be coaching men's sports and on and on. And so let's just get the best of the best. So if the field is flattened in terms of facilities, right, and TV contracts, whatever, then we'll just get the best people guiding our young players. Hopefully they'll be paid too. And then we'll find out which of these coaches are for real. The Davos Swinnies of the world in football, they may know how to win games, but are they really building men the way that I would want my son to be built? I would argue no. And if we empower all these schools, we'll get the best of the best doing that.
What's better? What's better for the world, if he goes to Howard or the G League?
For the world?
For basketball, right? What shakes things up in the right way?
Probably Howard. It's a great question, because I'm a big fan of the G League opportunity too. I'm gonna make it real simple. The coaches that are in the colleges that really understand and get it, what their role is, When we looked at things for my son, because I can speak about this very plainly now, who was going to help my son grow into the man I hoped he one day is? I can't do it alone. My wife has done more than I. Neither can do it alone. We wanted people, men and women, and they're talking to him right now because he can't go there yet, who are trying to guide him to a better place that we could get him. The coaches that do that, the programs that do that are great for America. There just aren't many, just the reality of it. And I tell you what, they're not at Clemson. They're not at some of these big-time schools. I know that. But they are out there at all levels. And so they are helpful. But there's not enough of them. And so the G League's an amazing option. Now, I'm not sure Sam Mitchell is the answer. I don't trust that he knows, having been in the NBA as long as he has, to how to guide these young people. But the opportunity is there for the G League to really develop those players far more than just as basketball players.
Brian Shaw was named as the
I don't know him at all
of that select team
as much. Yeah,
and I've done a great bit of research on this. They don't know in terms of the G League, right? Like how they're going to do that whole piece of it. Yeah, they have resources, but they don't know. I mean, the one thing that some college programs have is they have an infrastructure set up where it's like, okay, we're going to have, finance guy come in and we have this, and like all these sort of like structured things set up for you to learn. Now, the programs that do it best are the ones where the coaches actively engage and work with them. The other ones is just kind of like you can run through like a factory. Right. So, and to your point, Coach, a handful of those exist. Yeah. So the G League has a chance to do it well. And I believe they want to. Will they? We'll see.
Yeah. And I wonder how, UCLA is doing some soul searching over this one, right? This hurts.
They didn't see this coming. You're exactly right.
Did not.
So what happens there, right? What happens there? I don't know. That'll be interesting to see.
Actually, great question. What happens there? They better start addressing some of those things, right? Yeah. These top schools. And if they don't, they're going to get crushed by the new culture that we're hopefully building, where the Howards and think of all the schools like that, and the universities at all levels that address those issues.
Yeah,
they're going to have a big advantage going forward because it shouldn't be just about basketball. I can tell you what right now, it ain't about academics. I've coached NBA players. When they first come to my gym as young players, I typically rarely raise my voice in any kind of angry way. But when I do, when they're rookies or first or second year players, I do often say, this ain't college anymore. No one's doing your test for you. You'll be gone in a heartbeat and no one else will care about you. You'll be overseas. The word we always say, the phrase I always say is, you'll be in Poland in a year. And nothing against Poland, but it's not the Bucks and it's not the Clippers.
Right.
Better wake up. No one's doing your test for you anymore. And so we have too many colleges like that.
So, but this, I did an interview with Chris Bosh, who's a certified proud dork. Like it was on the AutoCAD team in high school, right? Like, and it was sort of part of the preamble of the conversation, but I was basically like, can you turn it off? Like the chess playing part of your brain? Like, are you, he knows where 10 players are on the court, like precisely at all times. But like, do you know where everyone is in the cafe? And he was like, oh yeah, I do. Like, he totally does, right? And so, for Chris Bosh, and I don't know, to me, I'm not doing some old man routine, but I do think that the NBA has evolved a little bit since I first started covering it. But now, like, there are a lot more dorks in the NBA right now, it seems to me, right? College, they were making, there's some story about it's like players making fun of other players for like who couldn't spell. Like they all like, they were making fun of like Wichita State or wherever they went to college, right? But
right.
But nowadays it's a little different, right? And nowadays I think it's totally possible that it is about the academics for some, right? Like, and maybe at Howard even more so, right? Like
absolutely at Howard.
Right? Like maybe there's a higher holy calling there that makes it like really like delightful, just heart aflame with love of just like, ooh, I can't wait to go learn about this, right? Like that's something UCLA is going to have a tough time matching.
Well, in many ways, what Howard's going to have to do is, right, UCLA has already shown what they've done with, and are they Under Armour now? I think Under Armour might even pull their deal.
Under Armour's about to drop them.
That's right, because Under Armour's got no money or whatever. Right. So they've done what they did with their money and showed you. If the sneaker companies like Nike, Adidas, whoever start pouring Puma, because they're on an upswing, if they start pumping money into a school like Howard, the question is going to be, back to the capitalist machine, what do they do with the money, right? Like, Of course, you know, the facilities, I get all that. But the facilities, trust me, if they're going to give you a lot of money, there's going to be a lot of surplus left over. How do you allocate that, and what do you do to build your program? So to your point, Coach, and your point, Henry, it's the kind of place where you're like, yeah, you're building men there. Because let's be real. There's maybe every year 60 NBA jobs available, maybe. Right? Like the chances of you making it, highly unlikely. What are you going to do post-basketball?
They're gonna actually; those are gonna be the coolest goddamn shoes you could get, right? Right?
Pumas are nice. My friend sent me some the other day.
Well, whatever the Howard shoes are, right?
Yeah, the Howard, yeah.
We
if
hope.
Howard does well in the tournament.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Oh my God. They'll be the new Georgetown. When I try to tell my son, who doesn't pay attention to the 80s stuff, I was a white high school player who loved John Thompson, and because of Horace Brodnick, I wrote about a couple weeks ago. They were one of my favorite teams. They were Michigan before Michigan, Georgetown was. Those Hoyas teams, and they were like the Miami Canes of football. Like, fuck everyone, we're just gonna win. If Howard does that,
woo boy.
I mean, they're gonna. Yeah, I hope. Here's a fear. All people can be corrupted by money. We don't. The Howard experience. I coached a young man with my son a couple years ago who, I don't know if he's valedictorian, but one of the smartest kids in a 2,000 person school. And I think he's at Morehead State. Brilliant kid. Both his parents are doctors, live in the area here, PhDs. There is an experience at these schools I don't want to have ruined because all of a sudden you're bringing in 5-star players. You don't want that because there's something. And I am friends with the head coach of Florida A&M. Horace was the head coach of Bethune-Cookman. These are historical schools here in Florida. I don't want that to change, and it shouldn't. There's a lot of honorable people running those programs at the highest levels academically that I don't want to change. But yeah, Howard starts winning games. If we ever have an NCAA tournament again, which might be 2024, my son's a senior. I'm hoping he makes the tournament then. It'll be a lot of fans.
You know what it makes me think about a little bit? Like I had this, I was in Vegas for some NBA thing, and I forget what it was, but those hotels have the longest hallways in the world, right? You're walking in your room for 75 minutes. And, but it was late at night, and I was coming back from whatever NBA thing, and there was a young, in-love black couple in front of me, right? And they're like arm in arm, and they're chatting. I think they don't know I was there, so I felt a little bit like I was eavesdropping, but I could, because of the nature of the architecture, I could just hear everything. Yeah. And she was like, well, where are we going to go? And he's like, I'm going to take you to the blackest club you have ever seen. and she just, her body like relaxed. She kind of leaned in. It was like this kind of like very safe, affectionate kind of thing. Yeah. Like, this was like these were the magic words he said, right? And like that, like UCLA can't give her that.
Yeah,
100% not. Nope.
We just had this conversation. We have a player. He graduated high school at 16 from the worst public school, basketball-wise, pretty much in Florida, right down the road from us, where my son played. And his family was from the Congo. They moved here, and I don't know if he was born in the Congo. I don't remember if he was born there or not. But they just had no clue. They moved into a terrible system for basketball. We trained him in his post-grad year while he was 17. He never should have been. He should have been a junior in high school, and we developed into a mid-major player. And I told him, if you could go to Florida A&M, that's where I want you to go. I said, I don't just visit. As it turns out, he had done so poorly in his high school academically, we couldn't rally it up. So he's at a big-time Division II program. But that's what we wanted. We had really good Division Ones that you would know about that are NCAA tournament schools. But I said, my vote, do whatever you want. This will change your life forever. The other place is a 4-year basketball job that you were looking at. Go to Florida A&M or Bethune-Cookman. It changes your life forever. And I know because I've coached players. I coach one right now. I coach a 3-year pro who play at A&M. And that alumni base will be his brothers and sisters forever. And that isn't I don't have that at the school I went to in Florida.
Yeah, that's huge. That the HBCU experience for so many, that is something, again, to your point, Henry, UCLA, there's nothing they can do with that. And again, if a school like Howard or Bethune-Cookman or whomever uses that influx of money, if they get that from a school, from a Nike or whomever, that could even make that experience that much better, right? Because then they have all the resources necessary, and it makes it even more attractive. And everyone knows as your sports programs get better, that increases admissions, right? That's just they go hand in hand, and it'd be incredible. It'd be incredible.
I think that's coming, to be honest. I think, there's a lot of crap that we're not going to solve, but I think that's going to happen, right? I think that's.
And I think it's great. Like, I'm not someone who thinks it's a bad thing. I think there's a ton of talent. Henry certainly said this for a decade. You've got your blue chip guys, and there's a few. We all know who they are. And the rest of in college, for example, you got 330 teams. If you take away the blue chippers, which are not on every team to begin with, most of them go to Duke and Kentucky. I mean, there's the blue chippers right there pretty much. Players are so similar. It's just all about program at that point. The better coaches, the better programs develop their athletes into being the best they could possibly be, and the rest stink at it. And so let's give more people an opportunity to develop the same kind of talent. Then we'll find out who are the better managers in a sense and talent developers. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I know what you're laughing at, Henry.
Devin asked any big plans for Independence Day. Judy says, "This is America, Devin. I'm going to set you on fire my drive."
That is great stuff.
Judy, that can be taken in a multitude of ways, and it is so brilliant and so perfect.
All right. I guess we can't really top that. Maybe we'll leave it there.
No, I think we'll leave it there.
I'm not doing anything that good.
All right, you guys have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Be safe, everybody.